Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Mums at Work. My name is Sumayya.
And my name is Rawa. And today we'll be talking about the COVID impact on us working mums. So how was it for you, Sumayya?
For me, well, because I work in a school, so I was under the category of a key worker.
Yeah.
So initially, when when we were put into lockdown, it was like, oh, will I be going to work? Will I not be going to work? None of that had really been set up. It was just a sudden thing that we'd been put into lockdown. And initially, the first couple of days, we were at home, the school was shut, and then we got an email from the head saying that everyone is coming back to work. So all those fears of we're going to be exposed to the virus, and those children that will be attending the school will be all those are from vulnerable backgrounds. And there was a huge fear in my heart that not only do I have to go, but because I'm a key worker and so is my husband.
Okay.
So we were both working, and so that means the children would be coming to school with me, So it's not just me going in the front line, being in front of all these people, and my children will be there with me, so they would be just as much exposed to it as I am.
Definitely.
That
must have been tough.
It was initially like when nobody really knew much about the virus just yet, and how it would affect you, and the ways to protect yourself, and all of these things, and there was so much going on, and everything was still fresh and new to you, and I felt like I felt I would have done better at that time being at home, and but I had to fulfill my duties as a key worker and go to school and work. We were all placed in bubbles, and all the relevant precautions were taken, and everything was put in place. But I think still until today, I still have that fear that we're amongst so many children, and they're all from different backgrounds. And I mean, I think that fear, although it's kind of gone into the background, it's still there.
Yeah.
So throughout the whole lockdown, me and the children were going to school every day as normal. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And you don't feel like something in your life changed?
I mean, the schooling was not the standard everyday school. We were in smaller classes. We were in our little bubbles. We had all the restrictions and all the things you can and cannot do, and all of that was in place. And I mean, I'd wake up in the morning and do the same routine with my children, and we'd go to school, and we'd come back at the normal school time. So although that the day was kind of the same as in timing wise, a lot of things had changed in the way that we do things in schools.
Taking your precautions, for example.
Yes, taking precautions, and all the extra hand washing, and educating ourselves first before we could even educate the children, because this is something new for everybody. This is not something that we've ever had to experience before. So it was a struggle, and keeping social distancing, and of course now the children, for us to understand, was such a big deal, and for them to explain it to the children in the school that were coming. And they're all from vulnerable backgrounds, and you feel like they're also going through the same emotions and everything that we are going through. And as children, they can't express it as much as we can.
Exactly, and for them, it's the mental trauma of why is life suddenly different? Why is there a lockdown? Why, like for your kids, it must have been, why are we in school? Why are we not home taking care of ourselves, right?
Yeah, like you said, the children, and my children, like my older one especially, my younger one didn't so much get it as such, but my older one would continuously ask me, and still asks me today, how come we had to go to school? How come we couldn't be at home like their cousins and their friends that are not from vulnerable backgrounds, or like key worker backgrounds? They were at home, doing homeschooling, and all the online classes that had suddenly popped up and all of that. And I said to him, look, me and your dad are both key workers now, and this is the time where we have to fulfill our duties.
I think kids didn't even understand the word key workers, did they?
They didn't understand that, and so I had to somehow explain it to my children, and slowly they do become used to the idea and everything, and then. I mean, going to school, although with all the fears and everything, I think it was a blessing in disguise for us only because the routine was there for my children.
Yeah.
It was there for us.
That makes sense.
And although you have all those fears, when you're at your work, you know your focus is just, you know, you have to get through the day, the lessons and everything that's planned there, and you kind of push your fears to the side or to the back, however you want to take it, and it's not always there in the forefront all the time. So you do realize that sometimes being part of the Keyworker group was a blessing in disguise.
And how did it change you as a person?
I think so, most definitely. I think you do become more aware of the things around you, and also you become more sympathetic about how people are feeling. Because sometimes, you know, as you said, like as a working mom, you just go like, you know, there's so many things to complete that you don't stop and think that if I'm feeling this way, another person must also be feeling that way. Yeah. And as a child, I noticed this in my children as well, that because we can vocalize things, you know, may it be at the end of the day when you get angry at someone, but you just kind of let out your frustration. As a child, if your child starts getting angry or frustrated at something, you try and put them in their place and say, no, this is not the way that a good child acts or whatever, you know. And I feel like that's not right. Children have the right to be frustrated, to be scared, and all of that, to show their emotions. And I did see that a lot, not in just my children, but the children that I was the leader of the bubble of. And, you know, they just want to come and have a chat with you and they want to hug you, but obviously they can't. Yeah. And I mean, kids in school, we don't really go and hug all the kids, but sometimes kids just come and give you a hug, or they put their arm around you, or they want to come so close to you and chat to you. But I had to keep reminding them that, you know, you have to keep social distance, and it did make me think that the children are so innocent, bless them, that they have such a huge impact. This is such a huge impact that will stick with them forever. Definitely. And it does make you become more sympathetic, and your heart does become softer towards them. You're more
aware of their feelings.
Exactly. And not just children's feelings, other people around you as well. You do realise that certain people are not going to be comfortable with certain things anymore, ever, I don't think. You know, this is going to change the way we live our lives forever.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
How did you cope with the COVID impact?
So I think it came as a bit of a shock to our system because I work in a head office somewhere. So I remember we got an email from the director at the time that said, it looks like there's going to be a lockdown happening this week, and I'm very happy for you all to start working from home from now. And I remember it was my working from home day anyway, and I read the email and I said, I'm really sorry that then you won't be seeing me this week anymore. So all my stuff that I had pre-lockdown is still in the office, but luckily I didn't need anything. But yeah, I think it was a shock to my system, and initially you have that whole unknown fear of what's going to happen. Is everyone okay? Are we going to be okay? But there was, for me, the added fear of I don't want to lose my job. You know, I think that affected both me and my husband, actually. So tensions were very high. And because we had to make sure we wanted to secure our jobs, we started working harder than we've ever worked before. And it's crazy because actually the work increased for us during lockdown. Or we made more work for ourselves. I don't even know how it worked, but I think just people generally all got scared about losing their jobs, so we worked harder. We worked longer hours being at home, and it just made you realize how did we work before, because we used to be able to speak to your colleagues next door for an hour or go have a coffee break for half an hour, and suddenly we didn't have time for any of that, even though we were at home. So yeah, life went a bit crazy. It did turn a bit upside down. And obviously, like you said, dealing with the emotional side of COVID. So I know for me, you know, I started to get a lot more stressed. I started to get a lot more angry, a lot more panicky. I started suffering from anxiety. I think I started feeling emotions I didn't know existed. Emotions I never felt before. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's normal, you know, it's the fear of the unknown. We're going through a pandemic. We didn't think we'd go through something like this in our lifetime, you know. So yeah, for me, it did make life a bit harder. You know, on the plus side, I was at home. So I was able to be there for my kids because they needed me. I was able to, you know, when school started again, I loved the fact that I could pick them up from school and you know, drop them to school, because in a previous show I mentioned that was my mom guilt when I first started working, that somebody else was doing that someone else was picking up my kids, and I hated that. So for me, that's what I loved about the working from home element to it. And as a working mom as well, you know, it's beneficial to be able to work from home, because you can just put a washing load in the washing machine while you're sending an email and know that it'll get done. And whereas sometimes when you're in the office, you're thinking, oh my God, I've got so much laundry to wash, you know. But it has made life easier in that sense. But yeah, no, work definitely increased. Let's just say that, and it did start getting a lot more stressful. But I think as well, when you speak to colleagues, you realise we're all in the same boat. We all had the same fears. We all had the same emotions. We all were scared of the unknown. We all realised that why is there suddenly so much work to do? But I think one weird thing about work that happened is that we actually missed going into work. We missed our colleagues. The social aspect of it, It's just you realise that it is, you know, it is kind of taking you away. You're speaking to people. You're not just, you know, at home talking to yourself. You are going to speak to people, and that is refreshing in itself. Absolutely.
Something that you need, isn't it?
It's something you need, definitely. But it was nice to connect to work colleagues on a different level, on a more personal level, on a more deeper level, emotional level, because everyone had the same fears and anxiety about lockdown. So knowing other people in the same boat as you kind of helped. But at the same time, it was hard. Definitely, it was hard.
Just the point that you said about how your workload increased during lockdown. It's funny you say that, because so did mine in a way. I mean, I was working at the school from Monday to Thursday, and then I had my baking, which suddenly like ramped up because everybody decided that they wanted, you know, treats, and because they couldn't meet their friends and family during the lockdown happened shortly before Ramadan, and you know there was it happened shortly before Ramadan, and you know everyone decided that they wanted to treat their friends and family, and so during the weekends I had so much extra work, like you said, that, you know, how did you fit it all in before? So I had so much extra to do, and I'd go to school during the Monday to Thursday, and the other days I would just be baking and you know, fulfilling all these orders, and you just think there's a lot going on there.
Alhamdulillah, you had
work. Alhamdulillah. So
as stressful as it was, right?
Yes.
So let's see what Isra's got to say about stress.
Stress is quite often categorized as a very negative emotion because it's had such a profound effect on so many people in their lives. But it's actually recognizing that there is a stress that is positive, and it's distinguishing between them. Is it a positive stress or is it a negative stress? Because some stress in some situations actually allows you to respond in either a dangerous environment, or it actually sometimes motivates you to do things. So, for example, if you're sitting an exam and you have some level of stress that's a positive stress, it motivates you and it drives you to actually study and prepare for it. And sometimes when people have no stress, they don't actually take enough action. But there is a level of stress that becomes really negative, and it has almost the opposite effect of people. So rather than doing and acting and responding, they actually stop doing and they stop responding in a positive way. So working on overcoming stress is important, but it's a journey as well. It's not about saying, oh, I've mastered it or I've not done it. It's a journey, and it's not about reaching a final destination, but growing through it. And you know, as an emotion, stress is an emotion, and any emotion has energy. So we term any emotion as an energy in motion. So because it's a motion, it's almost like it comes in waves. And what you want to do is begin to master your own mind, that the wave is not about stress not happening, but when it happens, you almost snap out of it quickly and you're able to work with it. So instead of having huge dips in those waves, it's really working on narrowing those waves down and then getting yourself up at a quicker and faster rate. And that's when you know you're actually dealing with it and you're overcoming the negative stress. And again, I think with everything, I do like to work on a very holistic level, on a physical, mental and spiritual level when we do look at overcoming stress. On a physical level, I think definitely there's so much research that shows good nutrition, sleep and exercise actually has a big impact on how you deal with stress. But even setting time aside in your day to do things that bring you joy, the things that you enjoy, things that energizes you, really helps to eliminate some of those stressful situations. On a more mental level, and of course this kind of, for me, that's a lot of my passion and my work. It goes into the mastering your mind or mindset coaching. So it's learning to master yourself and mastering your mind, and identifying that it's not the actual situation or that person or that environment that is actually stressful. It's actually me choosing to stress about this. So that thing in itself, that outside thing or an environment, isn't stress, but I'm choosing to stress over it. And I think once we take ownership of that, once we realize it's me that's choosing to stress, then we can work with it. And so many people say, oh, you made me stress, or that work is stressful, you know. But actually, once you take ownership, you're then able to empower yourself and work through it and begin to master your own mind. And stress is, as with so many things, it becomes a habit for people. And it's almost that part of your subconscious mind that's actually ruling and taking charge of how you deal with things. And our subconscious mind is actually in charge of probably about 95% of what we do. We work automatically on so many things. And mindset mastery is about saying my conscious mind is actually going to take control of my subconscious mind when I choose to do that. So it's recognizing that, I always try to explain that in almost like education sometimes, it's saying that between any stimulus and a response, there is a time step between them. So recognizing that stimulus, and your automatic response might be to stress or panic or worry or scream or shout. That's the response that almost your mind has created, the journey that your mind's created. So when you work on yourself and mastering your mind, it's about really cutting that journey and saying, I want to almost reinvent that journey, or reinvent it, rewire it, so that I choose a different response. And when you do that, you can do it by setting yourself a trigger. So when you have a particular stimulus, you trigger yourself into something that brings you joy, maybe something even physical that gets you out of your head into the physical world. And what you're doing is you're reinventing that journey. So instead of saying this situation causes me this effect, by setting yourself a trigger in the middle that's a positive trigger, it really helps you to eliminate that automatic journey and start to take control. So I think creating a positive trigger is a really important step. The next thing, I think, probably on a more spiritual and mental level, is beginning to surrender the outcome. A lot of people stress because they're worried about an outcome, and they say, oh, what if that happens? And really kind of surrendering that and focusing in on the present moment, focusing in on the process that you need to do, really helps you. And obviously, as Muslims, we believe in taslim, where you let go, you surrender that, and that really gives you a sense of peace and fulfillment from inside. So any exercises that helps you become more present really helps to reduce and overcome a lot of the stress.
Yeah, so as stressful as it was, I think for me, I did enjoy lockdown more than other people. And I think one of the reasons why is because we connected again as a family. It was really important for us to have that family time back.
Yes.
And, you know, spend time just the four of us bringing us back kind of to the basics of life, you know, just sitting, playing a board game, just sitting, watching a movie, appreciating that, you know, home-cooked food and that we couldn't order outside anymore because, you know, we feared for ordering food outside. But I think it made the kids kind of really realize not to take things for granted. You know, ordering outside has become a treat, not like before it wasn't, that sort of thing. So there was a real beauty in kind of being stuck at home and not being and having that lockdown, don't you think?
I definitely agree with you there. I mean, like you said, you came closer to your family, you know, doing small things that you may have never had the time to do before, like playing board games. We did the same thing, you know. In the evenings we would sit together and play like Uno for ages. It was such a simple game, but you know, there's so much fun in that. You know, you giggle and you laugh. And sometimes you would never have time at the end of a busy day, a school day, to do things like that. And that's although I was going to school on every day, but it was it was slightly more relaxed than the rigid. I did allow my children to become a little bit more relaxed. I thought there's so much going on. I don't want to be enforcing their routine as much. You know, let them be a little bit more relaxed because there's so much fear there. And because of that, we were able to connect as a family, play games together, make sure that we have our meals together. We were trying to do a lot more movie nights.
And it really helped with the religious events that we had, like in Ramadan. It really helped being at home all together, because then we're able to have suhoor together and we're able to have break our fast together. That was really beautiful. And obviously all the other events like Muharram and like Layali al-Qadr and stuff like that. So that really helped the fact that we didn't have to wake up at 6 in the morning the next day to get to work, because we're working from home, we're in lockdown.
So just like you said, I mean, initially all the religious programs and stuff, they went online, and at the first thing I felt like, oh well, I want my children to go to the classes, you know, physical classes. They learn so much more, they learn a lot, and they have that social aspect to it and everything. But then slowly, as we were doing this every day, we'd sit as a family and listen to all the dua and all the majalis and everything that would come on. And I think my children absorbed so much more because they had the chance to ask us questions. You know, we can stop and start whenever we felt like it. You know, and we would sit at the time that suited us. You know, as a family, we'd sit, and there wasn't that hustle and bustle of going to get ready and going to find parking and all the rest of it. And then you have to get out early and because there's school the next day and all this. You know, and although I was going to school the next day, but it was just slightly more relaxed because it was just I felt very spiritual and connected to Allah during Ramadan and Muharram, although you feel like you're not going there physically, but you're you know, you don't need to be always around people in the mosque or something. You can bring everyone. There was that saying that now every home is a mosque. You know, there was that saying that I heard that you know, because of lockdown and
because we're able to bring it home. Definitely.
Exactly. And I would make that effort.
And to be honest, I found this year more than other years people connected more to God, because I think when you go through a hardship, and Corona was a hardship for everybody. You know, we all went through the same. We all went through the same hardship, and everyone dealt with it differently. But everyone found it hard. You can't say there was one family that found it easy. But again, it was a test from God, you know, and I feel like people had time to connect with God, and I think that was one of the biggest, you know, because everything happens for a reason. There's a reason why Corona happened and why God suddenly wanted everyone to be at home. People were able to just sit down, reflect, and just prioritize what's important in life, and just think, wow, God does work in mysterious ways, doesn't he? But he had to inflict this massive pandemic on people for them to just slow down and realize what's important in life.
I think you realise the importance of everyone's roles that are played within the pandemic. You know, there's so many different roles and responsibilities that happen that sometimes you don't even think about. Like key workers. To be honest, you know, they're taken for granted, aren't they? Exactly. They're just, and I just feel like, you know, everyone has such a huge role and responsibility to play in coming out of this pandemic, and now slowly but surely we can see ourselves somehow coming to the end of it. Inshallah. And I think that Allah probably thought that, you know, he needs to kind of halt the world a little bit just so that we can, you know, bring ourselves and
just reconnect with our kids, with our husbands, with ourselves, with the world, with him. It was just the chance to just stop and slow down and just prioritize things, because I think life got busy for everyone. It was too fast paced and people lost kind of what was important in their life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So there's definitely, for me, there was a real beauty to COVID and Corona and what happened. But I think the downside for me was definitely my kids' mental health. I think that took a battering. It really did suffer. And when you have to deal with something like that, you kind of neglect yourself. You press on your own emotions and your own frustrations, and you try not to cry in front of your kids. You try not to show any negativity in front of your kids, because you don't want them to see that, and then they start becoming like you. You know, they start to imitate you.
The kids pick up things so quickly.
So I think that was, for me, the downside of Corona. I think people that are suffering with mental health during that time is going to have definitely a long-term effect on them, especially the children. And it's important to maybe recognize these things early, and try and work with people early if they've got any sort of mental state. Definitely. But that's why, you know, our previous topic of, you know, me time was for me a lot more important during lockdown, than any other time in my life, because even sometimes I just took me time just to go and cry, just to let it out, because that was, you know, it refreshed me. To be honest, that did refresh me. And then I was able to concentrate on my kids again. But it was nice. What's nice is we got to explain everything to them. So why God did this, why mental health is important. We touched on so many more topics during this time that you wouldn't normally during a normal day. You know, so it was. I still look back at lockdown in fondness, and I just said to my work colleagues today, I said I think we're going to miss these days because people are saying how they've had enough and and they want to go back to the office. And I said to them, but to be honest, I think you will miss these days where you've been at home and where life was a lot slower, a lot quieter.
I think we had built. Well, I had built a routine of doing things around the house and just being more present. In my family, in the family circle, you know, and I think now I'm gonna miss it, because now I know that during this Muharram, the mosques and things like that have begun to open. You know, they're beginning to open, and although I want to go, of course I do, but I just feel like, you know, that you feel that you had that comfort and you had the religious side and the spiritual side in your home, and now to step back out into that, now that's another fear, isn't it, of stepping back? It's
another fear, and it's another test.
There's another test now, there, isn't it?
God's going to test us to see if we can still maintain what we built during the lockdown, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah,
that's definitely
that's the test. And just one little point that you said about when you're talking about when you have to, like, sometimes the emotions come out and you feel a lot more lighter about it. This is something that that reminded me of when we got an email from our head to say that all the staff members are going to be coming back to school, and there's certain bubbles and all of these, and I saw my name on the list of bubbles, that I was going to be the leader of a bubble, and all of these, and we got the email during the day, and I just kind of held it all in. I didn't say anything, and I just like, okay, fine, this is the way it's going to be, and this is, you know, I can't do anything, but this is my job, this is my duty that I have to perform, and everyone has a job and a duty to perform, and blah blah blah. And then come the evening when everything was quiet and the children were asleep, and I was already in bed at that time, and all of these emotions just erupted in my head. And I had this huge panic attack. And even when I think about it now, I just like, oh my goodness, I've never had a panic attack in my life about anything. And I've been through stressful situations. And my husband saw me and he was like, ya Allah, what is going on? And he thought, oh my goodness. And I just said to him, I'm just so stressed and so panicked. Like my heart rate was going up, and my hands were sweating, and my breathing was out of control. And he just thought that that's it, you know. And I just said to him, I'm so stressed. If I go into work now, I'm going to be exposed to all of these different people, and the virus is there, and then I won't be able to visit my parents anymore. And if I do visit them, then what if I pass something on to them and they're vulnerable? And all of these loads of things are going on in my head. But I think, like how you said, that, you know, you just let it out and you just cry it out, and you cry out on someone's shoulder that you trust completely. And I think that's exactly what I needed. Because once it was out of my system,
suppressing your feelings is no way a good idea.
And so once I was out of my system, the next morning I felt fresh, and I said, I do still feel scared. It's not all the emotions just disappeared, but I know this is a duty that I have to perform, and I have to go and do that. And that's what I just did.
And talking is so important, because that's something I try to enforce on my kids during lockdown. Is the same way we take care of our physical health by eating the right foods and exercising, taking care of your mental health is by talking. So until this day, I've got the routine with my daughter where when she gets into her bed, we talk every single night. And we talk about anything and everything. It could be emotions, it could be just what we did that day, what we didn't do that day. But just by talking about things, you know, and especially kids, they have a lot of questions, don't they?
They do, hundreds.
So just kind of giving her the right answers and telling her, but everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine, you know, we'll get through everything together, because we're together, and as long as we're happy, we're healthy, everything's fine. That really helped as well. Just talking.
Definitely the talking part, because I think I had to keep reminding myself and then reminding my children that, you know, alhamdulillah, we're happy, we're healthy, we have each other. And, you know, this is the time when anything you want to talk about, like you said, you talk to your daughter in the evenings. We also have a routine that at dinner time on the dinner table, we'll all talk about our day, because we were all going out of the house. My husband was at work, me and the kids were at school, you know, so we had lots of things going on. And, you know, there was, although we were going to school and work as we would have done normally, but things were very different, you know. Even my husband's day was so different to what his normal day would have been like, and our day was so different. And obviously, to speak about it and let it out of your system is exactly what you need.
No, definitely.
So, and this is something that we have continued, you know, every night we have a conversation about, you know, how was school, and what did you do, and this and that, and just like the normal stuff. But so many things come out, so many questions come out from all this, you know. And as the kids you may have noticed, as your children are getting older now, they have so many different questions, and they want the answer to the question. They're not, and you can't just fob them off and saying, I don't know anymore.
No, and they're quite emotionally challenging kind of questions.
Yes.
Well, we've been through it. It was a tough time, but inshallah we're at the worst of it, and inshallah you and your kids continue in the best of health and iman.
And your family.
Thank you, inshallah. And inshallah all of your families stay happy and healthy and full of health. Thank you for joining us with At Mums at Work.